My name is Lily Whalen, and today I will be talking about the recent use of the Dustman data wiping malware in the attacks on Bahrain's national oil company Bapco. This attack took place on December 29th, 2019, and is assumed to be part of a larger string of cyber attacks affecting the energy sector surrounding the Persian Gulf. So we will begin by focusing on the key players of this attack. Although no specific hacking team has claimed responsibility for deploying Dustman, the IBM X-Force Incident Response and Intelligence Services team cited that they believe apt34 or Hive 0081 to be behind the attack. These teams are suspected to be based out of Iran due to the history of data wiping attacks that are most commonly used by hacking teams affiliated with Iran. I will mention that McAfee Security cited apt33, another Iranian-affiliated hacking team, as the culprit, but most of the sources I read through did not bring apt33 into the conversation around Dustman and the Bapco attack. I think to fully understand this incident, it is necessary to look at the history of cyber attacks on the energy sector in Gulf nations, specifically data wiping attacks that are believed to be coming out of Iran. On August 15th of 2012, the first and most significant data wiping attack was deployed on Saudi Aramco. Before this attack caused significant damage to Saudi Arabia's national oil company and economic powerhouse, there was no real system or investment in cybersecurity in any of the Gulf nations. After the company lost 75% of its network, there was a big push towards cybersecurity that led to much less devastating attacks since. Shamoon, also known as Distract, was the first strain of data wiping malware to use LDOS raw disk. I will explain the processes of data wiping malware later on in the video, specifically for Dustman, but for now we will just take a moment to talk about the evolution of this malware. After its initial debut in 2012, Shamoon's versions 2 and 3 were used in a string of attacks between 2014 and 2015. In 2019, Shamoon was updated to a new strain by Hive 0081. They called this Zero Clear and used it multiple times before the Dustman attack in December. When looking at Dustman's functionality, we have to begin with how the attack begins. In July of 2019, a list of remote code vulnerabilities of the virtual private networks of both Fortinet, VPN appliances, and Palo Alto networks were published online. It is assumed that Bapco was using Fortinet at the time of the attack in December. And once the hackers took advantage of this vulnerability and entered the network, they were able to update their privileges to admin using LDOS raw disk. LDOS raw disk is the unifying factor behind all of these data wiping malware strains: Shamoon, Zero Clear, and Dustman. The network vulnerability paired with the rewrite to the privileges by the LDOS raw disk toolkit leaves all servers, or left all the Bapco servers incredibly vulnerable. Using the toolkit's ability to interact with files, disks, and partitions, Dustman uses a single executable to deliver all of the necessary loaders and drives to overwrite all of the data. Once finished, it displays the Windows blue screen of death. Zero Clear, the strain before Dustman, is slightly different in its execution, as it used 2 files in the place of Dustman's 1. After the servers are successfully wiped, The malware downloads a cleaner tool and deletes all of the VPN logs to leave without a trace. Here is a helpful diagram to understand the flow of this attack. We can see that without the exploitation of the VPN vulnerability, this attack would not have been possible, as well as we can see that for every step of this attack must be completed before moving on to the next, so it's very important that every step of this runs. When observing the consequences of the attack, we can see it was a cybersecurity success. Despite Dustman successfully running on a few servers, the damage was relatively minimal. Due to Bapco retaining most of the information about this attack, there's not much quantitative analysis of these consequences, and it is hard to know if the success is attributed to a failure of the Dustman malware or success of Bapco's cybersecurity measures. Although Dustman's failing to run properly on some of the servers left behind evidence allowing Bapco and IBM to quickly name the malware and propose possible culprits. As I mentioned earlier, data wiping attacks are common methods of attack for Iranian-affiliated hacking teams. This knowledge, along with the specific targeting of the energy sector, leads many to believe that the motivation behind the attack was an attempt to sabotage the economic growth and success of Iran's oil-centered economy. Other very unlikely motivations that were also proposed were to steal confidential information, which, due to the Dustman malware that was left behind on the servers that it didn't run properly on, we know that Dustman's primary purpose was to completely wipe all of the data off of the servers to set Bapco back economically and developmentally. Another very unlikely motivation is this attack to be a retaliation after a U.S. drone strike killed a top Iranian military general a few days before. And finally, we reach our conclusion. Although it may seem obvious, I think it's worth stating the importance of companies to invest in cybersecurity. The differences in damages caused by very similar malware, both in the Saudi Aramco attack and in the Bapco attack, before and after this prevalence of cybersecurity in the Persian Gulf nations, Bapco's ability to handle the data wiping attack once their VPN vulnerabilities were breached and go back to work the next day is an example of the benefits of cybersecurity. Before I finish up the presentation with some questions, I wanted to draw attention to these security concepts that we studied and how they were relevant to this attack. Like we learned in class, an adversary will take advantage of any vulnerabilities between a user and a server. We saw this in the case of the VPN in this Bapco attack, as well as once a vulnerability is taken advantage of, the importance of privileges to be able to get in the way of that, and in this case, the ability to rewrite privileges proved to be a threat to this Windows operating system within the Bapco servers. And now for some questions. First, what security measures could Bapco have taken after the publishing of the known VPN vulnerabilities of Fortinet and Palo Alto networks in July of 2019? Second, with the development of more secure VPNs, what are other possible attack vector routes for data wiping malware such as Dustman that could possibly be used in the future? Here are my sources, and here is where I got the images that I used in the presentation, and thank you for your time.